So we're about to hear from Gareth Smith of Sea Walking Tours, who, by the way, offer free daily walking tours in both English and Spanish. You know, it's such a great thing to do if you want to learn more about this fabulous city we have here, so make sure you head to their website. But here's Gareth to explain some of Manchester's LGBT plus history.
Manchester itself, actually, it's got a long history with supporting the LGBT community. So a lot of people may have heard of the Stonewall riots, which were in 1969 in New York. However, in Manchester, there'd already been people who were campaigning for LGBT plus rights. This was started in 1964 with the Northwestern Homosexual Law Reform Committee. So this was when homosexuality in England was still illegal, and they were campaigning for the legalization of it, which happened in 1967. Now, the Homosexual Law Reform Committee the main offices were in London, and they thought with the legalisation of homosexuality that their work was done. But there was a gentleman called Alan Horsfall. He thought there was still a long way to go. So in 1969, he set up the Campaign for Homosexual Equality, and that campaigned for equal age of consent, lots of other rights that we now have, same-sex marriage, things like this. So they've been running in Manchester since before the Stonewall riots, basically. But in terms of the gay village itself, as I mentioned, it was illegal. And before this time, around Canal Street, this area was a very quiet area at night. Basically, the cotton industry in the city had declined. It was made up of a lot of warehouses that were being unused. And also with the increase in road travel, the canals were no longer used for boats. So basically, it was very dark at night, not many people around. If you're doing something that you didn't want other people to see you doing, it was an ideal place to go. So it started to end up with a lot of prostitutes around that area. Basically, it became the red light district of the city. And actually, the New Union Bar, which is at the bottom of Canal Street, this is where a lot of prostitutes used to drink while they were waiting for customers. And the police used to go in, they would raid the bar and arrest the prostitutes. And so gay men started to go in. And as gay men were also being prosecuted and their bars would be raided, basically when the police came in, the prostitutes and the gay men, they would pretend that they were couples. This way, the police couldn't arrest either of them. So two communities that were working together to evade the police. But with legalisation of homosexuality in England, the LGBT community in Manchester didn't feel that safe, we'll put it that way. There was the chief of police, James Anderton. He used to try and find other laws to prosecute the community. He used to raid bars. He wasn't particularly a friend of the LGBT community, so it still remained quite hidden. He retired in 1991 after making some comments that HIV and AIDS was God's punishment to homosexuals. So, yeah, he basically retired. When he retired, a new chief of police came in, but he was more liberal. And also, since the 1980s, the Council of Manchester, they've been putting more effort to try and support the LGBT community. So they had particularly put people in libraries and things like this, liaison officers. They've been supporting HIV charities and things like this. So in 1990, this is when they decided to give the official title of Manchester's Gay Village to the area around Canal Street. They gave more licenses for bars to open there. And one of the bars which became one of the most influential at this time was Manto. Manto was the first bar to have completely plated glass windows. This was in 1990. It was quite a shock for a lot of people. It's the first time you could see into a bar and see the people drinking inside. Also, you could see out as well. And they say for the first few months, it wasn't really that successful. They were losing money, basically because people were too scared. But it then developed into being one of the most popular bars on the street. And from that, lots of more bars started to open. The council also supported the community by giving the bars around Canal Street late licenses. Basically, they were worried with alcohol law at the time, meaning everything had to close at 2:00 in the morning, that if the gay village closed at the same time as everything else, and everyone was coming onto the streets with all the rest of the people in the city, that there would be lots of trouble and lots of hate crimes. So their idea was, let's keep the village open till later, till 4, 5 in the morning. That way, when everything else has gone quiet, people can make their way home in peace without anyone harassing them. sure we all know how that actually worked out. Basically meant everything closed at 2 a.m. and then everyone heads over to the gay village to continue drinking for another 2 or 3 hours. But again, this had a benefit for the community. It meant lots of people interacting with them that wouldn't normally have done so. Now it's developed into one of the main party areas in the city. But you also have in 1999 the TV show Queer as Folk, a drama based around Manchester's gay village. Quite controversial at the time. I can still remember the headlines in the newspapers from when it was actually first aired in February. Some of them weren't particularly supportive, but it really put Manchester on the map for the community in the UK. There has, in subsequent years, been debate over how much this has helped the community. Some people saying that it has brought into a destination for hen parties and things, but it definitely it was a changing point in the UK and brought into people's homes something that we'd never seen before. So, but the council, they still help to support the community and they help to support Manchester Pride. It is one of the longest running prides in the UK. Originally started from a car boot sales, or a jumble sale, in 1989. So they basically were raising funds to support people who were dying from HIV and AIDS. And this then developed into Mardi Gras, later becoming Manchester Pride. It's one of the most visited events in the city. I think it's the second most visited event in the city centre after the Christmas markets. The council, they are still helping support. Again, anyone walking around the city, you may see the little rainbow mosaic flags that you have in the floor. So to name a few of them, like I mentioned, there's one outside the Midland Hotel, where Ivan Novello and Noel Cowell met. You've also got a lot around the gay village. So you have one at the Alan Turing statue memorial in Sackville Gardens, as well as the Beacon at Hope in Sackville Gardens for people who died from HIV and AIDS. We've also got one for the Albert Kennedy Trust, which is on the car park outside the car park on Sackville Street, the multi-storey. Albert Kennedy, he was a 16-year-old. He was in the care of Salford Council. And basically, he was being bullied a lot. So he ended up committing suicide by jumping off the car park, the top floor of it. So they set up a charity to support LGBT youths who were being bullied, still running today. The little rainbow mosaic flags, they were originally installed in 2003. Which is when Manchester held Euro Pride. More as a tourist attraction, it was quite forward-thinking of the city as well in 2003 to be looking at LGBT tourism. So it was a way that people could come to the city and they could discover the hidden side of the history in Manchester. And bearing in mind when they were uncovered, this was when Section 28 was still actually in effect. It wasn't repealed until November of that year. So it was quite forward-thinking of people to be placing those in the streets.
Beth Hemmings!
Beth Hemmings.
Beth Hemmings.
Beth Hemmings.
From Radio.
Turn it up!
But that was Gareth Smith there from Sea Walking Tours, sharing his knowledge of some of Manchester's LGBT history. As he mentioned, the Manchester Pride Festival began as a fundraiser for people living with HIV and AIDS, and it has now evolved into one of the biggest and most visited events in the city.